Hi friends, welcome to how to crack XAT or a XAT strategy video from iQuanta. I'm Amit Panchmatia, and in today's video we'll be talking about mainly what is the pattern of XAT, what kind of questions are asked in XAT, what is the difficulty level, what are the cutoffs for colleges, especially for XLRI and for some other colleges which accept the XAT scores. So obviously the most important college when we talk about XAT is XLRI. XLRI has two major programs. One is BM and one is HR, that is Business Management and Human Resources. XLRI being one of the most popular colleges in India, or maybe I would say even in Asia, for human resources. Okay, so let's look at the test duration and everything. The test is 170 minutes plus 10 minutes, two parts of the test. Total sessions or slots are only one, which I think should be a relief to a lot of students who had this problem that, in CAT, the 3 slots were kind of not equivalently difficult or easy. And hence there was some kind of always issue that my slot was more difficult or not, and so on. So XLRI takes care of that. That is only one slot, which happens on Sunday. Okay, total questions are 95. This includes the GK questions also. GK has 20 and the remaining questions are 75. So we will concentrate initially only on the first 75 questions. Okay, now 1 mark for every correct answer. So it's not like CAT, it's not like a +3 -1. Over here it's +1 and -0.25 because there are 5 options also. So understand that much, and that is why the negative marking is 0.25. There's a very different thing which XAT does is negative 0.1 for every unattempted question after the first 8 unattempted questions. Now this part is always a major issue for students. A lot of students keep pondering, thinking over it. What should my strategy be? Should I attempt those extra questions, not attempt those extra questions and all that? So let's just try and get that out of your mind, So if I look at the 75 questions, obviously GK, there is no negative marking. So this does not include GK. Anyway, GK, because there is no negative marking, you will attempt every single question. So 75 questions which we have, how are you going to tackle it? Now, depending what you are, how you're going to attempt the test, whether you're a quant expert or you're better at quant than verbal or vice versa, you need to approximately have 40-45 attempts in those 3 hours. You need to have 40-45 attempts. Now, if you're anyway going to attempt 40-45 questions, say, let's assume you're going to attempt 45 questions, plus another 8 questions which are allowed to be not attempted, 53. So we are left with around 20-22 questions, which I will have that negative 0.1. Now, what should I be doing? Should I be worrying about it and saying, okay, let me attempt more questions because I don't want that negative 0.1? Very frankly, no. See, I am not saying that you should not attempt that. If you're prepared for it or you've solved the question, you should definitely attempt it. Yes, maybe an RC where you had one doubt and you've solved, say, 2 or 3 questions, and should I solve the 4th question also? Yes, maybe you should. But a fresh question in, say, Quant, or a fresh set of DILR, or completely fresh set of DM, should you be going for it just because you don't want the negative 0.1? Definitely no. In fact, I think in your mind, you should just have it that there are going to be those 15-20 questions at the end, maybe 20 questions at the end, which you will not be able to attempt beyond those 8 also. And hence you will have a negative, that is 0.1 into 20. That means you'll have approximate negative of 2 marks. And that you have to kind of factor in your cutoffs and everything. That will go from your overall, remember. So hence your sectional cutoffs will not matter, but your overall cutoff can matter. So hence you will just have to keep that in mind, and that could happen, could not happen, whether you will miss your sectional overall cutoff because of that or not. But I think you should just keep that overall cutoff +2 because of those questions which you will not be able to attempt. So general knowledge has 20 questions, which we already spoke about, which will include static GK and general affairs that means GK for the last 10 years maybe. And then there could be the remaining questions, 10 to 12 questions around static GK, and the remaining 8 to 10 questions could be around any area. Okay, let's talk about the cutoffs, the XAT 2025 cutoffs for BM. There are different categories which they have divided into. There is a male engineer, female engineer, male non-engineer, female non-engineer. And as usual, whenever it goes through, we come to know that the cutoffs, the percentiles. Now, if you look at Quant, has the total is around 96, 96 and 91. 96 for males and 91 for females. The sectional cutoffs of Quant more or less remain same, and for engineers, non-engineers is remaining the same, not too much difference, because as I said, this test is actually good for both, for engineers and non-engineers, because an engineer could do well at quant and a non-engineer could do well at verbal, because the sectional cutoffs are low, and also the time which we have is available to us whichever way we want to use it. There is no sectional time limits, and hence, say if you feel that you've been able to clear the verbal cutoff and the DM cutoff in 40 minutes, you could spend all the remaining time in quant and just do well there. Okay, what about the HR cutoffs? The HR cutoffs are much lower for female non-engineers and every category. At 87 percentile of female non-engineers will get called. DM cutoffs are also pretty low. So please pay attention to these cutoffs. I'm sure if you need, you can just rewind and take a screenshot of this. What were the marks versus percentile? So as I was saying, 38.2 marks got you a 99 percentile last year. Now, 38.2. Now, if I just put that number in perspective, there were 75 questions. If I'm looking at 38.2, what is the number of attempts I need to have? What are each section? Again, I just need to clear the sectional cutoffs, and post that I can do well in any one section. Somebody will do well at quant, somebody will do well at DILR, at verbal, and there will be a very rare or less number of students who will do very well at DM. Also, don't think that you did well at DM last year. Suppose you wrote the XAT last year and you've done well at DM. Doesn't necessarily mean that you will do well at DM this year also. It could be it could fluctuate a lot, because DM, sometimes the answers are so vague that two people might have a very different view on a particular point. Yes, there are generic views and all that which will remain standard, but otherwise there could be a different view for people, and hence that view keeps changing. And so please remember, just don't take a decision that last year I done well at DM, I don't need to worry about DM this year. That doesn't work. Okay. XAT score versus percentile, sectional ones. Now see, in quant, 99 percentile is at 15 marks. 15 marks is 15 questions out of 28 questions. Okay. Now, when you compare that to, say, a CAT or something, which means you need to get slightly more than 50% of the marks, okay, to get a 99 percentile. Yes, but you can see the 97 has fallen by nearly 2.25 marks and so on. And the 85-90 percentile is at 10.5. But I would worry about getting that 97ish at least. Okay. VALR, again, the 99 percentile is a very, very similar score, 14.75. Number of questions are lesser, and hence VALR, you'll need to have more accuracy and so on. DM, the cutoffs are lesser. 12.5 was at 99 percentile. The cutoffs for a lot of categories were 84 and 80. So the cutoffs would be actually 8.75. So if you're not very good at DM, your aim should be to score around 11 to 12 marks, and that is how you have to work. If you've gone through the pattern by now, you know that each set of DM is around 3 questions, which you need to attempt accordingly and plan so that there are 7 threes are 21 questions. Maybe 5.5 sets is what you need to attempt, and that is why you'll have to keep some speed up. This is iQuanta's course which we are offering, more or less free only. You'll have so many things. You'll have the XAT mocks, the XAT practice, you'll have live lectures, and everything will be available. So you can still register for it. Still around 20-25 days to go. Verbal ability and logical reasoning. Let's break it up section by section now. 26 questions of approximately on this section. Important topics, obviously reading comprehension. There is also a poem. Now, I know you're not used to a poem at all in any other test. And, there is a myth that XAT poems are always difficult. Yes, they were difficult a couple of years, but then a couple of years they became standard also. So don't just leave a XAT poem saying, oh, it's always going to be difficult. Cartoons, passages, all these things, vocabulary, analogy, parajumbles, grammar, critical reasoning, very important for XAT. Okay. So you will have 5 RCs, approximately 15 questions, 1 poem with 2 questions. So that's 17 questions of RC, 1 FIB, critical reasoning, 3 questions. Very important, as I said, for me, critical reasoning in XAT is one of the most important things. Grammar, 2 questions, parajumbles, 2 questions, a total of 26 questions. As we said, good attempts can be 15 to 17, maybe 16 to 18 also, because if you want the higher percentiles in VALR. Now, always remember, in XAT, identify your strength. Very important. If VALR is your strength, try to maximize your score through that and just try to manage the other two sections. So then the number of attempts can go up, maybe even to 20, 22, if that is your strength. Okay. Let's look at the strategy. Read faster, because first of all, there are more passages. Passages might not be as difficult, but they are definitely, the number of passages are more. So you'll need to be faster in your reading, improve your reading speed over what you had in CAT. That will be one important thing. Poems may be easy or very tough, varies every year, so that keeps changing year on year. Sometimes, as I said, poem is very difficult, sometimes easy. Critical reasoning, crucial. If you have the time and the bandwidth, use some GMAT material to practice critical reasoning. Attempts, as I said, if you're looking at cutoffs and around that area, 15 attempts should be good enough with decent accuracy. But if you want to maximize your score, maybe even go for 20. Okay. Time, I will talk about time in a very peculiar way. So roughly 165 to 170 minutes is what I look at the section without the GK part. So what do I tell people is, that roughly break up your section as 50 minutes. That's 150 minutes. Then, or 45 minutes, whatever, 135 minutes. Then 10 minutes maybe for a section where you feel you're not going to clear cutoffs. See, suppose in the mocks, you've not been doing well at DM so much. So 10 minutes there to just tell yourself, okay, I need to put 10 extra minutes in DM, maybe get that one extra set in, so I'll clear my cutoffs. Next, the remaining 10-15 minutes, go to your best sections, maximize your scores. All those, if it is quant, all those questions you had marked as level B or something, which you want to come back to later and could not finish in the first 45 minutes, maybe take them up now. So that's how I would look at the time strategy. Decision making, 21 questions, 7 sets, 3 questions per set. Main areas tested, ethical dilemma, business decisions. No maths-based DM has been asked for the last 4 years, but you never know what they will do. They might just ask a maths-based DM. You can't just say, okay, they will definitely not ask. Some calculations and all. Yes, there are numbers, but there is no real calculations. I have seen some sets with numbers, but still there also the decision is more business decision rather than numbers decision. It is an area with low accuracy, period. Nobody can argue over it that, oh, I do very well at DM all the time. Yes, there will be, as we've said so many times, in a whole country, say 2 lakh people, 1.5 lakh people writing the test, there will always be somebody who will do excellent. But if you look at majority of the people, that is not how it works. Let's come to ethical dilemma basics first. What happens when there is ethical dilemma? How do you handle such things? So, bribe, theft, team conflicts. These are the main areas in ethical dilemma. Obviously, there can be something else also. What should you do? If there is a bribe, you had to give bribe to, say, a policeman on the road to save some time. You wanted to reach somewhere and you had to save some time, because of which you need to give bribe. Then that is a complete no. So example, I always used to ask this. What if you wanted to reach the XAT center? You were driving a car and you were to reach the XAT center, and a policeman catches you, you jumped a signal and a policeman catches you. What should you do? Should you bribe the policeman? I would say no. Pay your fine legally. That would be a stand. Pay your fine legally and leave immediately. Tell the person that you have a test, you are ready to pay the fine legally, you made a mistake, leave immediately. If it has gone into a stage where, say, he does not allow you to leave immediately or whatever, you tell him that I can park my car, let him impound the car, leave your license there, take a public vehicle, and again go for the test. That's how you work on it. Bribe to save a life, yes, acceptable. You have to pay a bribe because of which somebody's life got saved. Then, that's maybe acceptable. Official theft, report fairly. Somebody was stealing from office, even if it was small things like maybe pens or cords or whatever, small things. It was being stolen from office, then report it fairly. Don't make extreme reactions like, saying, no, how can you do this? This is really bad. So in fact, in one of our offices, we had a recent case of ethical dilemma where I felt that it was a thing which a person should have been reprimanded and should have been said that, okay, don't do this again. And that is how HR should have behaved. Maybe in that case, the HR took a decision of firing the person. So these are different things you handle differently. And that is why I said that A different HR would have handled that differently. A different HR would handle this differently. But there are some cases which are very, very strict, and you don't like posh laws in offices today. I'm sure all the working people know what are posh laws. The others can Google it up. Posh laws, they are very, very strict, and if anything around that happens, people are immediately fired. So that has to be reported very, very fairly. What will you do as if you were the HR manager, whatever? Team conflicts, always have balanced decision. Try to speak to the person, try to understand what the problem is. If you are the leader, try to behave like a leader. Give others the opportunity. If you are one of the junior employees, how should you behave with your leaders? All that becomes very, very important. Okay. Strategies for DM section. Again, faster reading, because longer caselets, you want 7 caselets, which means you have approximately, even if I count 45 minutes, and if you're going to attempt even 6, you have approximately 7.5 minutes per caselet. Okay. Attempt extra sets because accuracy is low. Give extra 10 minutes, as I said earlier also, if you feel you're not going to clear the cutoff. That means if there's any doubt in your mind that, oh, this looks like a difficult test and I'm not going to clear the cutoff, go and attempt the 7th set also. Give that extra 10 minutes. It's okay if your overall score falls a little bit. But if you don't, there's no point having a 99 point something and missing a cutoff. No point, right? So work on that. Watch video solutions to understand reasoning. Very, very, very important to me. Look at how our teachers are reasoning this section, or how they are explaining it to you. That becomes very important. Okay. And worst thing, don't just answer a question because it feels right. Okay. Just because you feel, oh, this is my feeling, this is right. Don't do that. Think like a manager. That will be very, very, very important. Let's come to my favorite section, Quant plus DI, 28 questions. So this was XAT 25 pattern. So arithmetic will be 4, algebra will be 4, geometry will be 5, numbers 2, modern maths 1. As usual, arithmetic is always slightly easier, even though algebra also was pretty moderate last year. Last year, what I noticed in XAT, there were 6 to 7 questions which were straightforward, very, very, very easy questions, sitters. Okay. Geometry, easy, moderate, difficult. I would say it was a mixture of each of them. Numbers also the same. Modern maths, probability was actually medium, but some people found it difficult. I found it a little bit medium. So look at it that way. Now, one more savior for the people who are not very good at quant is the DILR section, or the DI section. It is not a DILR also, it's DI. Okay. Now, when we talk about the DI section, there are 4 sets, 12 questions. This was last year. Maybe they'll change this year, whatever, I don't know. But what happens with this is that you are actually, when you look at this, it actually helps you clear cutoffs if you're not very good at quant. So then you can look at, say, 5-6 questions. Then you can attempt the whole DI section and look at 5-6 questions from quant. But others, engineers and all, can even score up to 20 marks in QA DI section if you give a little bit more time, if you're able to clear the cutoff of the other 2 sections. Strategy, 18 to 20 attempts. As I said, as I've been saying for all 3 sections, if it's one of your favorite sections, go for the kill, attempt more questions. Don't skip long questions. Questions in XATs are going to be long. You can't just skip a XAT question saying, oh, it was too long to read. I am telling you it will be long. Okay. There will always be some conditions which you will miss out if you're not reading very carefully. Practice without calculator, as we always know, that time spent on going to the calculator and using the on-screen calculator is always high. Cutoffs we've already spoken about earlier. What will be a final 20-25 day roadmap for XAT? Apart from your daily classes, you should practice 2 hours of verbal, because verbal there'll be a lot of RCs, poems, everything, and even the grammar, parajumbles. Parajumbles suddenly made a comeback in CAT. Some of you might have not revised because it was not there. So revise parajumbles. 1 hour decision making, 1 hour quant. Again, this will depend on person to person, depending on what is his or her weak section. Okay. Now, weekly plan. At least write 1 full mock. Maybe for a couple of weeks, even 2 mocks will be good. 1 section test, DM or QA, whatever you prefer, and analyze these mistakes deeply. Always analyze a test. Otherwise, there's no point, very frankly. So with that, we come to the end of this video. I would suggest that you have any queries, you can put it in the chat box below. We'll try and answer the questions around that. I'll give you. So work towards your strength in that. It is a test, and after some of y'all, I so many people wrote to me that, sir, my cat was not very good. I got under pressure and I did not write the cat well. All those things which happen. Now with that, XAT becomes a very, very important test. One of the best colleges in India, XLRI, is available through XAT. So please take the XAT very, very seriously. Best of luck to you.